Okay, and welcome to my presentation on my initiative for improving student climate and culture. I hope you enjoy. So jumping right into things, I identified this problem, by taking data from our student information system. We use Infinite Campus, and I looked at all of the behavior reports that have been submitted for the entirety of the school year. And they were broken into various categories that I outlined in two charts on the next two upcoming slides. And I also looked at our hipster software, which provides data on how many HIB, harassment, intimidation, and bullying investigations, and also affirmative action, AA, incidents. So, upon reviewing all of this, and upon gathering some qualitative data from the teachers, I was able to identify a need for an improvement in student culture and climate. So, outlined in the first chart, you can see that the majority of the behavior referral reports were under the category of disruptive or disorderly conduct, which is a very broad category. We have some aggressive physical contact, which is not good. We have HIB, and we also have theft. And in the second chart, continuing to break down those 64 reports, we have verbal threat, we have extortion and robbery, we have non-cooperative defiance, and we also have obscene or profane language. So in addition to the behavior referral reports, the HIB, the AA reports, the quantitative data currently available to us in this respect, we have the qualitative data gathered from the teachers, just simply talking to teachers, Google Forms surveys, just gathering their opinions, right? And overall, the opinions of teachers, they kind of think the student culture and climate, it's not the worst, but it could be a lot better. Many people have said that they hear students make comments about maybe the clothes somebody's wearing, maybe the color of one's skin. They'll make comments directly in reference to one's socioeconomic status, making fun of them in those respects. Maybe they'll make comments about one's appearance, which, again, no regard to anything about it, just the appearance itself, which we all know can be very problematic. So, of course, per our school's mission statement, this is a problem. An initiative to improve student culture and climate, I would argue, is imperative, right? Because our mission statement reads, "It is the mission of Assignment1 School of Humanities, in partnership with parents and the communities, to empower each child to achieve his or her fullest potential in becoming lifelong learners and responsible citizens. We are committed to fostering high expectations, promoting positive attitudes, and to achieving equity and excellence in a safe and nurturing environment." So, I would say that in some respects, we are doing very well, right? In terms of high academic achievements, students achieving their full potential. But when we're talking about achieving equity, when we're talking about creating a safe and nurturing environment, it's hard to look at this data and not think, maybe there's some room for improvement here. Moving on. Rationale for the initiative. Per the school's mission statement, it strives to be a place where students feel accepted, safe, and valued for their individual selves. So while the school excels in certain areas implied by the mission statement, there's clearly room for improvement in these areas to bring the school more in line with its mission statement. So how exactly will the school benefit? The school will benefit from exactly what the initiative says. There will be a clear improvement in the school climate and culture, and that can be accounted for quantitatively through a reduction in the total behavior reports, the total HIB and AA reports, and of course the qualitative data from teachers and even qualitative data from students, right? Student opinions matter too, as do opinions of the community members, the parents, right? All these opinions matter. These are all stakeholders in our field of education. And the initiative is going to create a healthy learning environment. And academics, of course, are very important, but the learning environment has a very profound impact on student academic achievement and, of course, student mental health. All of these things are going to affect student achievement. So it's imperative to actually improve the culture and climate of the school for the best academic outcomes. So with this initiative comes three SMART goals. So our first SMART goal is through implementation of morning social-emotional learning activities and ongoing teacher-led school-based professional development, Renaissance1 School of Humanities will reduce its total number of Code of Conduct violations, HIB, and AA behavior reports by at least 20%. So with the current total number being 70, including behavior referral reports, HIB, and AA reports all pooled together, that would bring the number down to at least 56. So we're looking at, by the end of the school year, we're looking at no more than 56 incidents. We're looking at roughly no more than 28 incidents by November, which is estimated to be the conclusion of the project. And the rationale is, as stated before, this initiative will bring the school more in line with its mission statement. SMART Goal 2, through implementation of teacher-led PLCs, school spirit-based activities, teacher morale will increase by at least 20%. An anonymous survey regarding teacher morale will be administered via Google Forms at the beginning of the internship and once again at the end. And the rationale for this being qualitative data gathered from teachers reveals that teachers have a low sense of morale, and this often results in reluctance to implement things that actually improve student culture and climate, such as restorative practices, right? So this will help us out in that respect. And then building directly on the previous SMART Goal 3, through implementation of restorative practices, Renaissance1 School of Humanities will see an increase in student empathy and accountability by at least 20%. This goal will be measured through an anonymous survey to teachers regarding their opinions on student empathy and accountability, and through qualitative data gathered through students in the upper grades. Students' names will be kept anonymous. And the rationale for this just would be how the current data points to how ineffective punitive disciplinary measures are. Yet teachers oftentimes continue to jump right to them. Maybe out of frustration, there's a million things that contribute to it. But helping teachers learn about and implement restorative practices in place of these punitive disciplinary means is going to bring the climate and culture in a much better direction. So let's talk about how we're actually going to implement these goals. So implementation of the first goal is we're going to have procedures. We're going to try and implement procedures for morning socio-emotional learning time. So a 30-minute block during a student's homeroom period allocated to just socio-emotional learning. Prompt questions about different topics, time to discuss feelings and things going on in students' lives, and even time to maybe resolve previous conflicts and potentially practice restorative circles or implement peer mediation to restorative practices out of the many other popular ones. But actually having time to take a moment to just focus on the climate and the culture instead of constantly shoving academics, reading, math, test after test, with just no time to breathe for the students, giving them that time actually to just deal with whatever it is they're dealing with in the morning, with the support of the teacher, with the support of their peers, creating a healthy emotional environment and taking time for it every day in the morning. So in terms of providing professional development to teachers, so we're going to go about that in two ways. One is teachers are allocated PLC time, professional learning community time, every week amongst grade bands, amongst subject matter. It depends on which teacher it is, but all teachers in our school have it. And this is a very good time to supply teachers with resources for fostering emotional intelligence and empathy among students, skills that are going to help the students actually bring the school where we're trying to bring it. And then as far as school, there will be school-based professional development too, both during staff meetings that I can organize, maybe parent workshops at night, and, they'll focus on things like how unsupervised internet access can impact a child's sense of empathy, accountability, self-esteem, and among a bunch of other things. So, talking about implementation of goal number 2, for starters, we have to consistently remind teachers how much the research demonstrates the ineffective nature of a more authoritarian approach to dealing with student disciplinary issues. And I know this is difficult, and I think teachers need to believe it, right? And the best thing we could do is just constantly show the data and constantly show alternatives to it. And I know it's difficult, right? But getting teachers to really believe it is what I believe is actually going to help this shift happen. So that's where my focus is going to be. Research shows that the most effective methods were the most humanistic, right? Being relatable and just, not being so authoritarian, just for lack of better terms. And just continue to provide data and other resources, again, for review during PLC time, because these PLCs run every week all year, so they can be used for many things. One week we focus on social-emotional learning. Another week we focus on restorative practices. Another week we focus on just emotional intelligence. There's a lot we can do with these PLCs, right? So the teachers have to buy in, though, right? That's really what we're trying to say here, is the teachers need to buy into it for it to work. Because if the teachers don't buy into it, they're not going to do it. They're just going to continue to snap and immediately implement something punitive, like take a privilege away or send the kid to the principal's office, and then we don't have any change. And then things are just the way they always were. Another part of improving teacher morale is just simply making sure that they have the tools that they need. Are reward systems being implemented? Do students have the opportunity to earn privileges? Class jobs, right? Maybe the door holder, maybe the line leader, all these jobs that have existed for so long. But we all know that those little, for lack of better terms, those little breadcrumbs of positive reinforcement, they work wonders, right? So are these things being implemented? And of course, do you feel supported by administration? That's a big part of this too, right? Because at the end of the day, I know that things can be difficult. And sometimes you really try to do everything right, and it still just is very difficult. And in those times, do you feel supported by administration? This is going to be a big part of teacher morale as well. They need to feel like administration is on their side. So, implementation of Goal 3, restorative practices. They've been gaining popularity over the recent years in favor of traditional disciplinary means. Research shows they're very effective, much more effective than a more authoritarian approach. So, we're going to need to have professional development for restorative practices. And I talked about that when talking about implementation of the previous goals, but they all tie right into each other. So, this is perfect. There will be professional development about the implementation of restorative practices. So you may or may not have heard of some of these examples, but whether you have or have not, some examples are restorative circles, mediation, conferences, and even school community service. So restorative circles involve, it doesn't have to be super technical, right? They say to sit in a circle so everybody can see everybody, but really it's just bringing everybody together. Everybody gets to talk about how they feel. We focus on taking accountability, and we focus on what the word says, restoring, right? Rather than creating an environment of shame and other things that invoke more negative feelings in students than the situation at hand may already have, right? We focus on solving, moving forward, validating, and so on and so forth, right? Things like school community service can be very valuable because they help us in the realm of student accountability. Oftentimes, we just take a privilege away from a student, and that's it. There's no real accountability. Maybe they say, yeah, I did it just because they feel like they have to, but the community service kind of helps us ask that question. Okay, so we did this. What are we going to do to make it right? And then the community service just kind of, it serves that purpose of accountability, which is a direction that I think we want to go. So at the end of this initiative, some products or results we can expect are, of course, there will be a report outlining a reduction in behavior referral, HIB, AA reports by at least 20%, no more than 56 reports, and of course a midpoint analysis by the end of November indicating no more than 28 reports. We're going to actually write out and develop procedures for morning SEL, and the focus will be on fostering student empathy and accountability. So we're going to provide a list of the resources that we provide to teachers for their PLC meetings, and we'll include artifacts and examples of each thing on the list. We want to provide a classroom checklist or guide for restorative practices that teachers can keep in their classroom. And this is because maybe the teacher's having a rough day, is feeling a little more reactionary, like every single one of us do every now and then, because we're all human, and they are about to react and be a little more authoritative, and they take a look at that checklist, and maybe that's the reminder they need to just take a deep breath and take a different approach, right? Or maybe they just feel like they haven't understood the information enough to actually implement it. And we've all been there too, right? We've sat through a workshop, professional development, a training, and we still didn't really feel like we were ready to apply what we learned. And reference material always helps in that respect. So we want to make sure we provide that for teachers. And then, of course, we're going to be administering anonymous surveys for assessing both teacher morale and, of course, the teacher's opinions on student culture and climate. And these will be administered both at the beginning of the initiative, the beginning of the practicum, and the end of the practicum. Well, I really hope you enjoyed the presentation, and I look forward to working with everybody on this.